Hi Gerrit, I am back here at the SMR area, and indeed I actually have my colleague Jokke from our Professional Standards and Government Affairs team, who has a lot of exciting SMR initiatives on polling to share with us today. But first I would like to dive back a little bit on the topic of polling and actually check and talk to you a little bit about that, because John and Kathy have already spoken quite a lot about the interpretation of polling and whether or not and how often actually they're really wrong, or in fact that's mostly a misconception. So tell us a little bit about that, like generally what goes wrong, or does anything go wrong to begin with?
Yeah, okay, so it's very difficult if you're not a statistician, if you're not a pollster, to understand how polls work. There's a margin of error that you need to take into account when you report on polls. So sometimes journalists or the media get this wrong, and that's why ESMR, together with APOR and WAPOR, have developed an international course for journalists. It explains how polls work, how sampling works, so for people who find it difficult to understand how asking 1,000 people can actually be representative of a country, this course explains that. And what it also does is it explains how to interpret polls, but also how to write about polls. So it's a very nice course for journalists. It's free, it's online. You can find it on our website and just register for free and take it anytime you like. So go there. It's actually a very good tool if you don't know a lot about market research. Most of our viewers will probably know a lot about market research, but when I did this course, I learned a lot about how market research works, so I can recommend it to anyone who would like an introduction.
That's fantastic, thank you. So for the journalists that are watching, or perhaps or for anybody that is not very familiar with market research or polling, we really recommend it. It's a fantastic new resource that SMR has developed to help this misunderstanding or misconception generally of the accuracy of polls. And going back again into what Kathy and John have just spoken about, and namely the fact that polling has such a reputation, whether good or bad, and how does that affect generally the market research industry as a whole and the work that the market research industry conducts. So what does SMR do to help our members work with that, and the way polling is misconstrued or not in respect to the larger market research industry?
Yeah, okay. So for a lot of market researchers, they might get difficult questions when polls go wrong in your country. And ESMR also gets a lot of questions when polling goes wrong. So that's why our government affairs manager, Kim, got a lot of questions. So these frequently asked questions, we wrote them down, and actually we thought it was a really good resource for anyone who gets difficult questions about polls. A client can say, hey, if the polls are wrong, how can I trust your market research? So that's why we built this frequently asked questions. It explains also a bit how polls work, but also why they go wrong sometimes. It explains the problem of not being able to reach the right kind of people, the right sample. It's getting more difficult to get people to answer to a survey. All those kinds of questions are explained in this document. So for anyone who gets difficult questions about market research, about polls, just go to our website and look at our frequently asked questions.
Thank you, that's perfect. So don't forget to do that if you are interested in or working in the area of polling. And actually, speaking of that, give us some examples. What kind of questions actually do you get, or what kind of topics do people like to know more about or need help with?
Yeah, okay, so one of the questions, for example, you see sometimes in polling there's rumors that polls are herding. That means that they are all sort of reporting on the same, or they're moving closer together as the election gets closer. And so this is one of the questions that's being answered in this frequently asked questions document. Another question is like the UK elections, these polls were so wrong. Can we even trust polls anymore? Should we use them? So it's those kind of questions that this document answers.
Well, it sounds really interesting, so if I were you, I would definitely have a look at those resources. And in the meantime, thank you very much, Jokke. If you have any questions on this topic, definitely reach out to our team, and Jokke and her colleagues will be happy to help further. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.